Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, depending upon where you are in the world. We're just going to wait a few minutes for everybody to join, and then we will get started. Okay, it looks like we can get started. I've got 10:31 on the Eastern time in the US. So I wanted to jump in. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. By way of introduction, my name is Matt Gallagher. I am the Vice President of Sales for Inspy, an enterprise architecture software company based in Cologne, Germany. With me, I have a few distinguished guests that I wanted to quickly introduce. Learn about the vital role that EA plays, especially in today's market where we've got some more challenging times for a variety of reasons. So I did want to, first off, I wanted to introduce Jeff Hartsfeld. Jeff is with Intermountain. The official company name is Intermountain Health, although they did drop. It used to be Intermountain Healthcare. They've dropped the healthcare, so it's just Intermountain Health now. He is a 33-year hospital system with over 58,000 employees, serving 7 different states. Jeff has been in the EA space for nearly 20 years as both a consultant and practitioner in the world. I'm also joined by Sonia McClure-Kaler, who is an enterprise architect at SouthState Bank with 30 plus years within the IT industry. She's had a varied IT career, including development, configurant, environmental, and service management. And her intense desire is to be a problem solver, which I think we need. I think we could probably all agree that we need more of in this world. She holds ITIL certification since 2001 and recently obtained ITIL 4 as a leader. Her digital and IT strategy certifications led to the designation, I'm just reading here. As senior architect for SouthState, Sonia specialized in communicating business capabilities and the evolving technologies are utilizing ServiceNow and the Inspy product designer. And finally, we're also joined by Vincent Lacour, who is in charge of leading the GBS digital transformation team for Lexmark. He has been with Lexmark for more than 15 years in a variety of roles and in a variety of locations, including Paris, Budapest, and Geneva, working in supply chain, information technology, etc. And he has worked across various time zones, which we know also poses a variety of challenges. He joined in early 2019 to lead the data and analytics workstream after approximately 10 years in IT, being in charge of analytics across various systems, including SAP, Dynamics 365. About 18 months back, his scope expanded to lead the GBS digital transformation initiatives. And they're going to be hearing from them, and I'm sure they'll introduce themselves. And last but not least, I also have to introduce my good colleague and my boss, so I have to really be kind to him. But I want to introduce Kadir Azbayram. Kadir is one of the senior partners and one of the founders of Inspy, and he'll be sharing some of his thoughts as well as we go through and talk to our panelists. I would be remiss if I didn't also thank our co-sponsor on this, SOFA Summits. They are the organizer of the leading global enterprise architecture event series known as Switch On. And I would encourage everybody, if you are not familiar with them, to attend these fantastic web-based events. Usually they bring you about 5 innovative and engaging events that are across Europe, across Americas, as well as the APAC region. They've also just launched a new series, and I think this is something that's near and dear to a lot of people's heart, and including mine, which is Women in Architecture. As we kind of move forward with that, we've seen a lot in that world today, and they do have a couple of events coming up, and you can learn more by scanning the QR code here at on the screen. So without further ado, I think it's important that we jump right in, and I thought what we would do is start with a poll question. As we know that this is a difficult time, market's changing. So we really want to hear from you about what your challenges are. So, what are the top challenges that you see in your organization? And what are some of the challenges that, you guys see in your EA programs? Is there anything we want to kind of see what some of the common themes are and see if they resonate with what we're going to be talking about with our panelists. So I'll give it a second for everybody to weigh in here, and then we can jump in. All right, I'm gonna end our poll here, and it looks like we've ended. So kind of interesting. One of the things that we see here is I'm gonna share the results. I think I can share them. But I think the inability to communicate value, certainly, I think that's something that we see a lot across the board. I think our panelists would probably weigh in on that. stakeholder buy-in. I think that's very, interrelated, and enabling innovation. So I think, what maybe we'll just jump right into it. And I guess, Jeff, I think I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm going to start with you about, does those results, does that resonate with you? Does that something that you're seeing at Intermountain Health? Kind of what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, certainly. I would have to agree with the poll. I think for us, we've really been focusing on how to realize value. We've always struggled in EA to be able to demonstrate it. Where have we been successful? But I think we've been too tactical. So for our approach, we're just trying to focus more on the business side of it, be more strategic, get more aligned with the less IT and more on the business side. So in the hospital world, we're trying to engage more with the clinicians and just really understand, what are you consuming from IT? What do you need? How can we improve how you deliver value to the patient? And so that's really what we've been focusing on. It is a challenge. So,
Sonia, how about yourself? Any thoughts on that?
Oh, I absolutely agree with that. I think that, we don't have a KPI, right? I mean, you can count the number of items that go to ARB, whether they passed or whether they failed. But in general, I think that our value is something that we have to show just based off our results. And, especially in our climate, it's something that's very difficult to measure our results. But I think that overall, building relationships with the business and then having those great relationships is one of our best results.
And Vincent, your thoughts on this? Huh?
Yeah, thanks. I think clearly, as you've said, some of the feedback were interrelated when we were talking about the value. And what's interesting, in fact, is when you think about enterprise architecture, it's all about creating a map of assets or business processes and so forth, and to set governing principles. But the key aspect in this initiative is to make sure that they do not stay within the function that is initiating these initiatives, and to make sure that at the end of the day, our stakeholders or our users are able to benefit from it, so that it's not just something that is useful for, let's say, IT or for a different organization, but folks in the business, our partners, do see value in whatever is being done from an enterprise architecture. So that's clearly a key focus, just to make sure that it's not just in silos, but that's being communicated and that's being seen as a value for the organization. It drives ROI afterwards, definitely.
So that leads me to a kind of a thought, if we're talking about, trying to communicate value. So how do you provide, and Vincent, you mentioned it, sometimes we see the silos, the siloed bits of information. So how do we provide that right visibility, and how are you doing it now? How are you providing the right visibility to the right stakeholders, to get them, make the right decisions? How do you really show that value? What are some of the tactics that you're doing? And I'll kind of leave it open to see who wants to start there, but Vincent, your hand is still up on my screen, so I'm gonna go right back to you on this.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So, once again, enterprise architecture, there are four main components. It can be either business architecture, data or information architecture, applications, or technology infrastructure architecture, regardless which one you are in. So on my side, the key focus I have, it's more on the business processes side, right? So the entire idea for me, it's to make sure that we're in a position to explain what are the benefits of digitizing our business processes in my organization. Because I'm part of the leadership team of GBS, which is Global Business Services, and that's all about end-to-end process governance. So once again, when we decided to digitize our processes, the point was not just to say, okay, so that's going to be great because we are going to get a view of our processes. The point was to make sure that the stakeholders, the people that engage with us, and we are going to discuss maybe later on how did we process to engage the different stakeholders, but they would be able to see the intangible benefits as well as the tangible benefits. The intangible benefit, it's like getting an authoritative source of truth for your processes or for your architecture at large. The tangible benefits, it's how are you able, thanks to this digitization, to do process re-engineering. It means what? It means that thanks to this visibility that you are getting, then you are in a position to either drive some automation, simplification, or standardization, and you can put some numbers in front of it so that people are engaged afterwards. And instead of being in a push mode where you try to convince people to come in and to play the game, then as you are able to deliver these tangible benefits, the other functions are afterwards asking you to support them in that regard. And that's really where we're in a position to get, I would say, win-win solution.
Yeah, if I can, I'm going to jump in as well on this. We've partnered a lot recently, and Kadir, I'm going to tout Peter, a member of the InSpy team, as a real strategic partner for us. We have gotten together and really looked at how to define business capabilities for EA, not for the organization. We know how to do that, but for EA. And then what are the use cases that we can deliver from EA? So I want to give you a real live example. We had a project manager who's over facilities for our hospital systems, and he came and said, we build these centers and clinics, and he said, for example, we build a surgical outpatient center, and we really want to know every time we do a new facility, we're going in and we're putting in infrastructure, we're putting in technologies, and we're putting in medical devices to deliver the capabilities that will be in that type of a facility. And they said, how can you automate this and help us make this quicker and more standardized, so that we're not using TV monitors for patient readings that are different in each facility. And so we took that use case and we really looked at it and said, well, what's the feasibility of doing this? Who's our stakeholder? Who's the benefactor of us doing this? We defined all those things. What data do we need? And it's pretty simple. As architects, we can start to put this puzzle together. You align the capabilities to the site type, to the technologies, and then you can start getting a repeatable pattern. In COVID times, we talk about difficult times right now with EA. We were sending nurses and practitioners from way south in Utah up into Idaho and different places to fill gaps. And they were saying, well, this is all different. We have different tools. We have different things we have to learn. By delivering this and having success for them, they can repeat this by site process. And then we just define the value proposition to them by delivering this use case to them. And we can measure success because they know how long it takes to implement these centers and how to repeat this process. And we modeled all of this from a template perspective on how to do the proposition or benefit propositions and all that in actually Designer. And so we have a repeatable process. So that's one way we can report back to our leadership. Hey, we're having success here. People are using our outputs and our deliverables to help facilitate this. So,
and if I could jump in real quick, exactly like what Vincent and Jeff was talking about, I think key to us is know our customer and really understand our different business areas. And I think the value that we can bring really depends on what it is they're looking at and what they need at this particular moment, because different business areas have a different level of technical knowledge and expertise, and maybe one particular area needs something that's more technical, and maybe another area needs something along the process perspective. An example that we have is in the banking industry, we also have a lot of repeatable processes. And so we've recently started a project where we're interacting with that business area and linking their processes directly to the technology that is enabling those processes. And then in a different area, they just really need to understand what is their capability, because often, like they said, we don't want to be in the ivory tower, right? The EA tower. We want to be down in the meetings with the business owners, really understanding what it is that they need and being able to address what that specific area needs and be flexible in what we're providing.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think those are all great. You guys all had great comments there. Vince, it looks like you want to weigh in there as well.
Yeah, I think back to Sonia and Jeff, some of the value that can be delivered and that can be demonstrated back to the users, back to the stakeholders. That's really what we're talking about. Being in a position to standardize, being in a position to simplify, and eventually to automate when we figure out some repeatable patterns that can be used afterwards. And that's, I think, regardless what we are looking at in our own companies, in our own corporation that thinks where it's a direct win for the business because they see the value of what can be done through enterprise architecture when we are facing this or delivering this type of outputs.
Which kind of makes me think of something else, whenever I think of, personally for me, whenever I think of when we're talking to, when we're trying to communicate business value, and I've heard through the years that I've been involved in enterprise architecture, which are starting to add up very quickly. I'm curious. I hear a lot about are they speaking the same language, and do we have the right people, and are they communicating the right message in the right language? So, it's kind of a two-part question. Is number one is, how, what are some of the ways that we're making sure that we have the people that that can speak that business language. And I guess maybe are there those talent gaps? Are there talent gaps, or are there other areas of talent gaps that we need to, as teams, start to think of? What's the current problem? Maybe give some thoughts on maybe how we correct some of those problems in the future. And I know that's probably a big question we could talk about for hours on end. But any thoughts on talent gaps and how we make sure we have the right talent that can speak a business language? Sonia, I'm gonna start with you on that one. You're smiling.
Sure. I mean, it's constantly a struggle, and I'm smiling because there's no degree for enterprise architecture, and maybe that's a good thing, right? I think that our team is rather small, but we all have different experiences and different paths that took us to EA. And I think that one of the common themes that I found as I talked to other EAs in the industry is I think that we're all driven to provide solutions. And I think part of that comes from our suffering in the past. I don't know about you guys, but often in IT, we have to suffer through some enormous IT disaster. And from that sparks in our mind, we could do that better. If we have a better picture of what we have, if we understand better who our customers are. And I think that's what drives people to the EA space is someone who really understands maybe a particular business area, or maybe broadly business in general. Maybe digital is their thing, or maybe just a deep experience in technology and how it would be better if we did something a different way. So, and I think in our business areas, we have a varied mix of people with, nowadays, a lot of people in the business area are very technical. And I think that definitely is a career path, and in larger companies that have that ability to embed architecture within the business, I think that's another way that you can develop that talent.
Jeff, thoughts?
Yeah, this is a great conversation on this. What I found that's worked of recent, because this does seem to change, is as you work with people in the organization. I think, Sonia, a lot of what you said as well. But as you work with people, they start to really get interested in what you're doing, and you can start to learn people's their skills and where they lie. And so I've started going much more business. I don't think we can talk about this unless we mention a little bit about roles. So in our organization, we have EAs, but we only have 4 EAs, and I lead that, and I really consider myself as one of them. We're doing all that strategic type work. And then we have enterprise solution architects, and we put enterprise on the front of that because they're centralized and they have an enterprise hat on. They are not embedded in the business. I think the drawback of embedded in the business is that you end up with a hospital system. We may have 100 service lines or business capabilities. So you can't really have 100 of them. It's just too expensive. So what I've done is I want to be strategic. I find that it's not very easy to promote a solution or an application architect to EA. They want to go in the weeds too quick. They're wanting to solution. People come by and they're wanting to go tell them how to code things. And that's not what I want. In our organization, we need to focus much higher level. So I'm finding business people that I mentor. And if they're interested in learning about it, then I say, let's meet once a month. And I mentor with that person for 6 months. And you can tell within 6 months, do they have the aptitude? Do they want to really love and have a passion for what you're telling them? And they start asking questions that you just know this is going to be a person that's going to think in boxes and lines and other things that we all dream about. Yeah, so that's worked really well for us.
Yeah, Vincent.
Interesting, in fact, both comments. To some extent, we're very similar to Jeff organization, where we have just tiny team in charge of, I would say, enterprise architecture from business processes perspective. It's 2-3 people basically. The way we did it, and I like what Sonia was saying, by the way, there is no degree for EA, so that's complex to find that on the market because you need to figure out how you are going to match the profile with what you are looking for. The thing that is interesting, or what we've tried to implement on our side, is to make sure that we would not talk IT within EA, so that we can communicate much better with the business and we can engage them in a much better way. So what we did is getting this centralized team that would be coaching, a bit like what you said, Jeff, coaching a decentralized team that is part of the business. And that would be what we call process analyst on our side. I think you were talking about solution architect on your side, Jeff. That's a bit similar, except that here it's something that would come on top of their activities, where they would be willing to go step in and participate to this journey, to this effort. So that's really how we worked on it, making sure that we're able to coach, to mentor, or to guide users, business experts, on the EA side, and this being done by a centralized team.
Oh, Jeff, I think you're on mute there.
I might add to that just a little bit. I really agree with that. I think consultant background also really helps because, Matt, you mentioned speak the language. You got to be comfortable. We're trying to get at the table. We're trying to get at the table of the strategy group, the business strategy group, and all these different groups that are reluctant to let this technical person over there in IT, which I really think we should be in business and not IT, but at the table. And so to do that, in consulting, you're going all the time and you're in front of groups. You're on the 6th floor of, a consulting company in Chicago. You have to have that ability to talk and know the language and be able to convert the language of the business to a solvable use case, which sometimes is totally different language, but you've got to know how to convert that. And that takes time.
Yeah, no doubt. So I'd be remiss too if I didn't mention, as we're going through this, if there's any questions that our audience has, please make sure that you type them into the Q&A section. We'd be happy to try to address them. I know a couple things are coming in, but one of the thoughts, and Jeff is kind of playing on what you just said there, is understanding the business and understanding the that use case and knowing that we want to provide this business value at the end of the day, and managing these, okay, well, we're in, sometimes financial unstable times. We're just coming out of a pandemic, et cetera. So we hear a lot about technology and innovation, and there's lots of talk about all sorts of, new technologies on the market that every business owner thinks, hey, this is great for my organization. So how do you balance the need to make sure that we're supporting existing and near-term business needs, and balance that absolute need for technology innovation to keep up with the times? How do enterprise architecture teams contribute to that success, and how do you do that balancing right now? And Jeff, any thoughts on that, especially from the healthcare industry coming out of a pandemic? Any thoughts there?
It's interesting. I just spent yesterday with our innovation side of architecture. So our chief architect has the solution architects, the EAs, and he has a whole innovation side as well. So I think having a clear delineation and having be able to focus on innovation has really helped us. But we went to their lab, and they're in healthcare. He's doing digital printing boluses and all kinds of things that the clinical side really needs, and is improving patients' care and their lives and stuff. So I think for us, again, it's just having that. We need to have yearly assessments with our business capability lines. So for us, pharmacy and oncology and stuff, they need to know who we are. We need to be communicating with them, because really the only thing they're consuming from either your internal IT group or a third-party group that you may be using is they're consuming app technology. So in the way of applications and and things, infrastructure to provide the background for integration and the data and into the EMRs and all that, and then partnership. There's really only three things they're consuming. So we need to understand everything that we deliver in the form of a service. And there needs to be an SLA, there needs to be a contract on that service. There needs to, in some cases, there needs to be the ability for the business to pull a lever and say, I don't need the Cadillac service. Maybe I just need the Chevy. No offense to car makers. But I think for us, it's just having that separation of duties and partnering together. And we align to one chief architect that really keeps us all in sync and working together. I don't know if that's the answer, but it helps us. So.
Well, I can
Vincent.
jump in.
Oh, go ahead, Sonia.
I was going to say that from our perspective, in the banking industry, I think it really comes down to risk tolerance when it comes to innovation. Obviously, in banking, we're heavily regulated, but like you mentioned earlier, in COVID, we had this huge bump in our deposits. But now with this, with the interest rates environment that we live in, we're competing for customers, and so customer experience has been our focus. And the thing is that while all these new technologies are very exciting and we're definitely looking to use, we have to be cautious of that. And again, it comes down to risk tolerance. When it comes to our infrastructure, in the stability overall, I think we are a little bit more cautious. But in general, I think innovation just really depends on where you want to be. And if you want to differentiate yourself in the market, you have to have a higher risk tolerance for that. But again, you have to balance it with, well, we do know we have to be a bank that people can depend on. Again, in the environment that we are, we have to make sure that stability is number one.
And Vincent, I know your hand was up, and I'd really love to hear, your perspective on this as well, because I know your business, Lexmark, has gone through some changes as well. Where innovation was a big part of that. So I'd love for you to talk about that.
Yeah, definitely. So I think what you were asking, it's really how do you balance the innovation part to more the as-is model? And when we are working on our side on these enterprise architecture activities, that's mostly all about being in a position to understand what are the different business processes, what are the outcomes of these different business processes. And, at the very beginning, I was talking about being able to identify intangible benefits and tangible benefits. Basically, when you're on the intangible parts, being in a position to map to digitize your different processes, that's what is going to give you an authoritative source of truth. That's what's going to give you the ability to implement BCP super fast if you need it. That's where you will be able to go through ISO certification much more smoothly. That's the intangible. Why I'm saying it's intangible, because you didn't get anything out of it except that you make sure that your operating model is going to work regardless what event is going to happen. But then when you shift to, I would say, the innovation part, or the tangible benefits, that's all where, regardless what are your processes, what is your industry, that's where you are going to ask questions about your processes. That's where you are going to try to identify opportunities for process reengineering, whether it's going to end up with automation, simplification, standardization, or eventually even new offerings. And I think Jeff was talking about the repeatable patterns and the standardization earlier. That's where on our side, we are trying to go and challenge the business itself. It's not too much about ourselves. It's more about the business saying that, okay, what are the findings we can get? What are the process reengineering opportunities we can get and we can implement, whether it's going to be about process execution lead time, whether it's going to be regarding our SLA. Maybe we're trying to do things too great and we don't need to get that level. And that's what we are going to measure with the stakeholders to identify where do we want to innovate. And I think that's really for us what's important, being able to differentiate the as-is, that is super important. We can keep running our operating model, and the innovation where we will have to transform ourselves if we want to innovate.
So Kadir, I've been you've been quiet over there. I've been ignoring you, so I apologize for that. But I'd love to hear your perspectives. I mean, you've been a practitioner, you're an entrepreneur, leading a small business. I kind of ask you, what we've talked about here today, particularly the piece between balancing that, keeping the lights on and, innovation. Do these messages resonate, and are you seeing this from a lot of your experience and a lot of the different customers that you're working with on a regular basis?
Absolutely. I think, I've taken 4 pages of notes, about what the experts said here. And I think I fully agree with all those bold statements you have done, guys. And I think I was a practitioner, but I'm still a practitioner as well, because I got introduced into EA in 2007, 2008. And we did something which you should not do really as an enterprise architect, drive it through IT, do a traditional bottom-up approach. So Jeff said it, he is more interested in the strategic part. Vincent said it, it's all about the business, it's about the business processes. Sonia said it as well, it's about the customers. There is one thing I liked what Sonia said as well is, you don't want to have that ivory tower. So I'm, as a practitioner, I'm started in that ivory tower, and we modeled the model of the universe. So we basically modeled that universe of the enterprise, and there was no outcome. So of course you need a model. The meta model is important, but it's something in the back. So you have to start really with the business requirements. And I love that quote as well, Vincent. I think I will steal it as well. There is no degree of EA, you said. And what I've learned in EA is it always depends on the perspective you are looking at. So there is no universal truth of EA. It always depends from the perspective. So what I've learned, being 13 years on the dark side of the power, right? So as a vendor, and supporting hundreds of customers, what I've learned really is the top-down approach. And this is something, and I think we are glad to do that at Inspire. We follow the model, we follow the top-down approach and say, what's our vision? What's the mission? What are our goals, strategies to deliver our business model? In the end, it's as well our business model, our capabilities we have at Inspire. In a software company I worked previously, the CEO said, as I'm asking, why don't we use our EA tool to manage our company? He said, we are too small for that. And I fully disagreed at that time. And I still disagree with that. So we use EA principles and methods and frameworks and models to run our business at Inspire. It's absolutely not comparable from a style perspective like Intermountain Healthcare or SouthState Bank or Lexmark. But, getting that top 100 innovator thing, I think it's an approval of that EA method is really working. So Vincent has a pure focus on the process side. And I think you have to understand what's your value chains, what's your value streams, how do you deliver that? And to Sonia's point, it is, what is the customer wants really to have? And then you can enable innovation. So the enterprise architects, in my sense, and unfortunately, most IT architects, and that's to Jeff's point, is they think they're enterprise architects, but they don't have that holistic view. They do not understand what the business really does. It's like, running IT for IT without caring about the business, what the business does at all. Hey, we are selling software, so that's what we want to do. Lexmark is a manufacturer. SouthState Bank on Intermountain Healthcare. You have products, you have services you're delivering. I'm, as an entrepreneur, as a CEO of the company, honestly, I do not care what technology I'm using. It should support my processes. It needs to automate those processes. So, and I think everything you said, guys, it's going across the board. The only problem is, as said, and I see that with companies, I see that with our partners, that they take IT architects, application architects, solution architects, and promote them as enterprise architects. And what they will do is exactly what Jeff said. They will try to implement those solutions and try to keep on the lights and do not focus that much into the alignment of the business. We talked about the skills, about the roles. There is a big communication gap. And I think IT is talking a different language. Business is talking a different language. As I was working as a practitioner, my role was being a mediator between business and IT. It's really a big problem. But I think the solution of this and enabling innovation, bringing in technologies faster into a company and differentiate yourself, that is what enterprise architects can absolutely do. They can ensure that standards are there. And look, I don't care what CRM system we are using at Inspire. That's not where we should differentiate ourselves from the competitors. But I'm damn interested in the software we are creating. That is where we need best of breed. There is exactly where we need the right technologies, new technologies. It is we are evaluating AI to see how can that enable and improve our processes, and the way to deliver better experience for our customers. So, and I think, looking holistically on that, I think every CEO should know EA or should be an enterprise architect, to really craft that enterprise top down and bring in the right functions and be supporting. Does it make sense?
Definitely does to me. Vincent?
No, I think that's interesting what Kadir is saying, and it just top on my mind. That's one of the things that, in fact, what software capability and what the tools are enabling us to do more and more to deliver this value that we're just talking about. In fact, it's really this capability to do assessment regarding future scenarios. Like being able to say, okay, where do we stand today, the as is, to be able to map the to-be process, and then from here being able to factually get back to the business saying, here are the benefits if we do so. And eventually here is the cost, so that we can get much more factual decision compared to subjective decisions that have been made in the past, whether they were good or not. My only point was all these decisions were sometimes a bit subjective and not factual. So I think that's these type of things are interesting, as Kadir was saying, in terms of new capabilities that are coming to the market with this as is to be or future scenarios planning.
That reminds me really, Klaus, my business partner, he had an experience with a CEO for a big international company he was working for, and he had a coffee session with him, and basically what the CEO in the end said, after he understood what Klaus is able to do to make fact-based decisions, right? He said, "Oh, do you want to control me? Do you want to control my stomach-based, decisions?" And I think that is something. It's a generational thing. I think we are running the company by stomach feeling as well. It needs to feel good, but I want to have the facts, because you don't want to be naive that you are crashing your company in 6 months or a year. We have seen during the pandemic a lot of companies crashing because they couldn't do the change quickly because they didn't know what they have. They didn't document their processes. They do not have the full line of sight understanding those impacts. And then they are struggling. The first thing you will do to cut your costs is to fire the people. That is the only thing you have under control, but you have no idea, can I switch off my SAP ERP system? What's the impact of that? No, we are paying 20 million on that. Just keep that running, right? You have no idea. It's really blindly flying. But I think EA and connecting those dots, that will give you exactly that insight. Is it a tool? Is it a tool problem? I don't think it's a tool problem. It's more a setup, a mindset problem, having the right people and processes in the right practice in the organization. And this tool, again, like any other software, will just automate, support, facilitate that. And I think that is what we do at Inspire as well.
Well, I know we only have a few minutes left here, but I'm going to give everybody kind of one last word. And this is the old classic. We talk a lot about Inspire as really being part of our values and thinking of the future and thinking of the future generation. So if you had a young enterprise architect, maybe there will be a degree in the future, who knows? But if you had the young enterprise architect, what's the advice? In 60 seconds or less, what's the advice that you give them to help somebody get started on that journey? To really help them make sure their organization is successful. Jeff.
Hopefully this isn't controversial, but there's a lot of stuff out there on LinkedIn, a lot of things you can follow of enterprise architects, and I read through it and I just shake my head. They complicate this space so much. The verbiage, the way they do things, I would say keep it simple. Let your business drive what you do. Frameworks are there for you to leverage, not to adopt wholly. I just really feel like, if you build it and they will come, it's not going to work too well. You have to do that a little bit, but let your business tell you what it is that they need, what's keeping them up at night. This is the old consultant view of things. But when they come to you as an internal consultant, you can say, I can help you with that. We have a CMDB. I have data. I just need this or I need that, and start to just solve problems that are there rather than trying to. It's just too complicated. I think simplify your life and you'll be more successful.
Follow the KISS principle. I love it. Vincent, any thoughts? I think you're on mute there.
You're on mute, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I think as Jeff was saying, and it can apply to anyone, by the way, junior in the company, it's be curious. Be curious, focus on continuous learning, and specific to EA, keep in mind that it's not about IT, it's not about business, it's about being the bridge between IT and business. And to be able to be this bridge, it's super important to get very good communication skills. And once again, to be curious about each side of it, to understand and to be able to be in a position to spot the potential benefits. That's really what it is about for me. Understand the framework, yes, for sure, but do not use it by default as a guiding principle. Understand the framework and try to elevate yourself to spot the opportunities that you will discover by being this bridge. I think that's really what I would share to a newcomer.
That's great. And Sonia.
Yeah, Vincent kind of stole my curious. Curious is definitely something I think that I would start with when talking to somebody interested. And then also to read and to really explore all of the information that is out there. Someone in EA, again, back to what Jeff said, you need to be at a higher level. And so, when you are thinking about getting into the career, you have to realize that you are not going to be the one coding, right? Not that you wouldn't do that in preparation to be in the EA space, but to really understand and to take advantage of all the information that is out there, and to understand that if this is what you want, you need a broader knowledge, and then you need to be able to pull yourself up out of the weeds.
Kadir, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I can just support what already has been said. So I think focus on the business value, focus on the problems the organization has. Try to accomplish those objectives. Like you want to go to a new market, you want to go to Asia Pacific to sell your services and products. That's the problem. Try to solve that one. You have to reduce your operational expenses by 20%. That's an objective you can be measured. So understand, how do we achieve that? Oh, shutting down applications is one. Do application rationalization. Identify the data you need to do that assessment, right? And then ensure that you have the data in that quality. So then you're suddenly directly in exactly that EA thing. Having that consulting background, like Jeff said as well, I think will help you. Be just open-minded. Do not focus too much on those frameworks and so on. It's a good basis to understand what EA is, but that's not sufficient. You have to understand your business and their needs, and not, do EA for the sake of EA. That didn't help at all.
Well, I know we're at time now, so I want to thank each of you. I know these are all topics that we could probably talk for a day on each of them. But as we did this as a fireside chat, I made the recommendation earlier that I think next time needs to be under a palm tree on a beach somewhere talking about this. I think that would be a lot nicer. Maybe a frosty drink in hand, who knows? But I do want to thank everybody, Jeff, Sonia, Vincent, Kadir, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. I'm sure this is going to drive a lot of conversation, and I know I've gotten a couple of private messages already, so we'll make sure that we address any outstanding questions that there are. I did want to call attention to the fact that we do have another webinar series coming up August 23rd. You can register for specifically about unlocking your growth in future state planning. This will be the next webinar from Inspire. So really kind of building on this a little bit about, if we're talking about technology innovation and business. And we're talking about how do we really do that future state planning and kind of continue on the growth path for organizations. This is a great webinar for you to attend. So we would welcome your participation. You can register now by using that QR code. And with that said, again, this is kind of the end of our webinar for today. Any questions that anybody has after this, I'm happy to, please reach out to me. Again, I'm Matt Gallagher. I'm the Vice President of Sales here at Inspire. Happy to put you in touch with the right people who can address any questions or concerns that you have. But without further ado, I want to thank everybody for joining us, and I wish you wherever you are in the world, wish you a great rest of your day or a great evening. Take care.